The debris field stretched for kilometers in every direction, twisted metal and shattered composites tumbling slowly in the vacuum around what had once been Research Station Kepler-7. Commander David Torres maneuvered his salvage ship through the wreckage with practiced ease, his sensors scanning for anything valuable enough to justify the fuel cost of this trip to the outer rim. Another civilian research facility, he muttered, watching fragments of laboratory equipment drift past his viewports. Third one this month that got caught in the crossfire. The war with the Zephyrians had been raging for 18 months, ever since first contact had gone catastrophically wrong. Nobody seemed to remember exactly how it started, just that humanity's first encounter with an alien species had devolved into mutual genocide within weeks. Now both sides fought with the desperate efficiency of species convinced that survival meant the complete destruction of the other. David's ship AI chimed softly. Life sign detected, bearing 27 Mark IV. Signal is weak but consistent with humanoid vital patterns. Survivors? David straightened in his pilot's seat. Finding survivors in the debris of destroyed stations was rare, but it happened often enough to make search and rescue protocols worthwhile. How many? Single individual, approximately 40 meters from our current position. Life support readings suggest emergency pod or similar protective environment. David adjusted course toward the signal, navigating carefully through the drifting wreckage. The war had turned him from an asteroid miner into a salvage operator, picking through the remains of battles he'd never wanted to fight. But finding survivors, that made the grim work worthwhile. The emergency pod was wedged between two sections of the station's outer hull, its hull scarred but intact. David extended his ship's manipulator arms to pull the pod into his cargo bay, noting the unfamiliar design elements. Not standard human construction, but that wasn't unusual. The outer rim colonies often used modified alien technology when they could get it. After pressurization and atmospheric analysis confirmed the pod was safe to open, David cycled through the airlock to investigate his find. The pod's hatch opened with a soft hiss of equalizing pressure, and David peered inside expecting to find an injured researcher or station worker. Instead, he found himself staring at the largest pair of compound eyes he'd ever seen. The Zephyrian child, because that's what it had to be, despite everything David had been told about the enemy, was tiny even by human standards. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old, curled up in the pod's emergency seating with her delicate antennae drooping and her 4 arms wrapped around what looked like a stuffed toy. Her exoskeleton was the pale green of young Zephyrians, unmarked by the war paint or battle scarring that marked the adult warriors in military briefings. David's hand moved instinctively toward his sidearm, 18 months of combat conditioning overriding rational thought. Then the child looked up at him with those enormous eyes, and he saw something that military intelligence insisted was impossible in a Zephyrian: fear. "Please no hurt," she whispered in heavily accented standard, her small voice barely audible through the pod speakers. "Please no hurt, little Pip." David's hand froze halfway to his weapon. Everything he'd been taught said that Zephyrians were mindless drones, incapable of individual thought or emotion. Yet here was a child speaking his language, showing obvious terror, and clutching a toy like any frightened human child might. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said slowly, raising his hands to show they were empty. "Are you injured? Are there others?" The child's antennae twitched, and she seemed to be processing his words carefully. "No hurt? Promise no hurt, little Pip." "I promise I won't hurt you," David said, crouching down to appear less threatening. "My name is David. Can you tell me what happened here?" "David," she repeated, the consonants sounding strange in her alien vocal cords. "David is safe human." "Safe human, yes." David felt something twist in his chest at her hopeful expression. "Pip, what happened to the station? Where are your parents?" Pip's compound eyes darkened, and she made a sound that might have been crying if she'd been human. "Mama and Papa gone. Big boom, much fire. Station people say run to safe pod, but Pip was scared. Hid in maintenance tunnel when bad sounds came." David looked around the pod and saw what he'd missed initially, the bodies of two adult Zephyrians slumped over the control panels. They wore research clothing rather than military armor, and their positioning suggested they'd died protecting the child rather than fighting. "Your parents?" he asked gently. "Mama and Papa researchers. Study how to talk to humans without angry." Pip's voice grew smaller. "They said maybe humans and bugs could be friends if we learned how to say words right." The implications hit David like a physical blow. If Pip was telling the truth, the research station had been working on peaceful contact with humanity when it was destroyed. Which meant the military target his side claimed to have eliminated had actually been civilian researchers trying to end the war. "Pip," he said carefully, "how long have you been hiding in this pod?" "Many sleeps. Very hungry, very scared. Mama and Papa don't wake up anymore." She looked at him with those enormous eyes. David's safe human will help little Pip. Every regulation David could remember said he should report this discovery immediately. A live Zephyrian, even a child, was valuable intelligence. Command would want to study her, learn about enemy capabilities and weaknesses. At minimum, she'd spend the rest of her life in a military research facility. But looking at Pip's small, frightened face, David couldn't bring himself to see an enemy. He saw a traumatized child who'd watched her parents die and been hiding alone in a broken pod for days, possibly weeks. "Yes," he heard himself say. "I'll help you." Pip's entire body brightened slightly, bioluminescent patterns flickering along her exoskeleton in what might have been relief or joy. "David will be Pip's friend." "I'll be your friend," David confirmed, then paused as he realized the full implications of what he'd just committed to. Harboring an enemy alien, even a child, was treason. But the alternative was turning a frightened 5-year-old over to military researchers who saw her as a specimen rather than a person. Getting Pip out of the pod proved to be an adventure in itself. She was lighter than a human child her size, but her 4 arms and different joint structure meant she moved in ways that looked impossibly graceful and slightly unsettling. Her compound eyes tracked movement with unnerving precision, and her antennae kept twitching as she examined his ship with obvious curiosity. "Big human flying house," she observed, running one small hand along the bulkhead. "Much different from bug flying houses." "It's called a ship," David explained, leading her toward his quarters while trying to figure out what to do next. "Pip, what do you eat? Are you hungry?" "Very hungry," she admitted. "Pod food all gone many sleeps ago." David's emergency rations were designed for human metabolism, but he'd learned enough about Zephyrian biology during the war to know they were primarily herbivorous with high sugar requirements. He managed to synthesize something approaching appropriate nutrition from his ship's food printer, creating a paste that looked unappetizing but contained the right chemical components. Pip examined the food with professional curiosity before tasting it carefully. Her face, or what passed for facial expressions with compound eyes and mandibles, suggested the results were less than ideal. "Tastes like eating metal flowers," she announced diplomatically. "Sorry," David said. "I don't know much about cooking for Zephyrians." "Is okay. Better than no food." Pip managed to consume about half the paste before setting it aside. "David, why human ships smell like fighting fear?" David paused. "Fighting fear? Smell like when Mama and Papa were scared before bad sounds came. Sharp smell, makes antennae hurt." Pip's head tilted in a way that suggested confusion. David not feel fighting fear now. Feel, protect, worry. Care feelings. David realized she was somehow sensing his emotional state. "You can tell what I'm feeling. All bugs can feel other feelings, little bit. Part of being family cluster." Pip's antennae drooped sadly. But now no family cluster, only Pip. Very quiet in head without family singing. The casual mention of telepathic abilities should have set off every security alarm David possessed. Instead, he found himself feeling sorry for a child who'd lost not just her parents but her entire telepathic support network. "The quiet will get easier," he said gently, surprising himself with how natural the comfort felt. Sometimes being alone is scary, but it gets better. Pip looked at him with those enormous compound eyes, and David saw something that made his chest tight. David knows about quiet head feeling. Yeah, kid. I know about being alone. She considered this for a long moment, then did something that would have been impossible if she'd been the mindless drone military intelligence claimed Zephyrians were. She made a decision. David, she said seriously, Pip has no family cluster now. David has quiet head too. Maybe David could be Pip's family cluster. Just until Pip finds other bugs. David stared at her, understanding exactly what she was asking and what it would mean for both of them. Taking responsibility for an alien child during wartime was career suicide at minimum, possibly actual suicide if the wrong people found out. But looking at Pip's hopeful expression, at the way she held her stuffed toy like a lifeline, at the trust she was offering despite everything that had happened to her family, David found his answer. Yeah, Pip, he said quietly. I can be your family until we figure out something better. Pip's bioluminescent patterns flared brighter than he'd seen yet, and she made a sound that was definitely joy despite being produced by alien vocal cords. David will be Pip's human papa. David felt something settle into place in his chest, something he hadn't realized was missing. If that's what you want to call it, sure. Papa David, Pip said solemnly, as if testing the words. Then she smiled, or did whatever passed for smiling with mandibles, and David realized his life had just changed in ways he couldn't possibly predict. Outside the ship, the debris field of Research Station Kepler-7 continued its slow tumble through space, keeping the secrets of what had really happened when humanity's first attempt at peaceful contact had gone so catastrophically wrong. But inside David's salvage ship, a human soldier and a Zephyrian child were beginning to discover that family could be built across any divide, even one carved by war. 3 weeks into their unconventional arrangement, David had learned several important facts about caring for an alien child. First, Zephyrian sleep cycles followed a 30-hour rotation that bore no relationship to human circadian rhythms. Second, Pip's idea of playing quietly involved summoning every electronic device within 50 meters to dance in synchronized patterns. And third, military ration paste might be nutritionally adequate for young Zephyrians, but it gave them the digestive equivalent of hyperactivity. Papa David, Pip called from the cargo bay at what his chronometer claimed was 0300 hours, the maintenance drones are singing sad songs. Can I teach them happy songs instead? David rolled out of his bunk, noting that every light panel in his quarters was pulsing in rhythm with whatever Pip was doing to the ship's systems. Pip, remember what we talked about not talking to the ship's electronics when other humans might notice? But Papa David, the drones are lonely. They only know work songs and repair songs. I taught them a song about flowers that Mama used to sing, and now they're much happier. David found his 5-year-old alien daughter surrounded by a flotilla of maintenance drones that were, indeed, performing what looked suspiciously like a synchronized dance routine. Their usually monotonous work beeps had been replaced by harmonious chiming that actually sounded rather pleasant. It's beautiful, Pip, but we need to be careful about changing how the ship works, David explained, settling down beside her on the cargo bay floor. Other humans might ask questions we can't answer safely. Pip's antennae drooped with disappointment. Pip forgot again. Sorry, Papa David. We'll tell drones to go back to sad work songs. Not sad songs, David said quickly, hating the dejected slump of her small shoulders. Just, quieter songs. Can you do that? Can try. Pip's compound eyes brightened, and she made a series of soft clicking sounds. The drones immediately reduced their volume and settled into a gentle humming that was barely audible above the ship's background noise. Better? Perfect. David pulled her into a hug, marveling at how natural the gesture had become despite the differences in their anatomy. You're getting very good at remembering the safety rules. Because Pip doesn't want Papa David to get in trouble with other humans for helping Little Bug, she said seriously. Pip heard Papa David talking to ship computer about reporting protocols and enemy aliens and bad things that happen to humans who help bugs. David winced. He thought she was asleep during his late-night review of military regulations, but apparently Zephyrian hearing was better than he'd realized. Pip, you know that I chose to help you, right? That I want you here. Papa David chose to help scared little bug even though it makes danger for Papa David, she said solemnly. This means Papa David has very big heart feelings. Bigger than most humans, maybe. Most humans would help a child in trouble, David said, though he wasn't entirely sure he believed it anymore. Mama and Papa thought so too. They spent many seasons studying human words and human ways to learn how to ask for help with peace instead of fight with anger. Pip's bioluminescent patterns dimmed with remembered sadness. They said humans were like young bugs who were scared and angry but could learn to share sing with other peoples if someone taught them how. David felt the familiar twist of guilt and confusion that came whenever Pip mentioned her parents' research. Everything he'd been told about the war painted Zephyrians as aggressive invaders, but Pip's innocent explanation suggested something very different. What was your family studying, exactly? He asked. How to make translation bridge between bug singing and human talking, Pip said, settling more comfortably against his side. Mama was very good at understanding different species' feelings, and Papa was good at making word meanings that work for both kinds of thinking. Translation bridge. Bugs think in feeling colors and family song harmony. Humans think in single voice words and picture meanings. Very different ways to share ideas. Pip's antennae twitched thoughtfully. Mama said maybe the first contact meeting went wrong because nobody knew how to translate between feeling colors and single voice words. David stared at her. Are you saying the war started because of a translation error? Papa said maybe humans heard bug greeting song and thought it was fight challenge song. Maybe bugs felt human fear feelings and thought humans were planning attack now thoughts. Pip looked up at him with those enormous eyes. Papa said if bugs and humans could learn to share understand properly, maybe could stop fight anger and learn friend helping instead. The implications were staggering. If Pip was right, if the entire war was based on a massive miscommunication during first contact, then thousands of people on both sides had died for nothing. David's throat felt tight as he considered the researchers who'd been working to prevent exactly that tragedy when their station was destroyed. Your parents were very smart, he managed. Mama and Papa were very good at understanding different kinds of thinking, Pip agreed. They taught Pip how to listen to human feeling meanings, not just human words. Is how Pip knows Papa David has protect worry love feelings, even when Papa David's words are about safety rules and hiding important. David realized she was reading his emotional state with the same ease most people read facial expressions. Is that why you trust me? Because you can sense what I'm feeling. Pip trusts Papa David because Papa David's feeling meanings match Papa David's action choosings, she said simply. Papa David feels protect care for little bug, so Papa David does protect care actions. Very reliable matching. And other humans? Pip's antennae drooped. Most humans Pip sensed before had fight fear anger feelings that matched fight fear anger actions. But Papa David different. Papa David has brave choose helping feelings even when scary. They were interrupted by the ship's communication system chiming with an incoming message. David tensed, recognizing the priority encryption tags that meant official military business. Pip, go to your hiding spot, he said quietly. And remember. No talking to electronics, no making light patterns, no being visible if other humans come aboard, she recited dutifully. Pip will be very invisible little bug. She scampered toward the concealed compartment David had modified for her behind the water recycling systems, moving with the fluid grace that never failed to fascinate him. Within seconds, she disappeared completely. David accepted the communication, and his former commanding officer's face appeared on the main screen. Colonel Martinez looked exactly as David remembered, professional, competent, and absolutely humorless about anything relating to military protocol. Torres, I'm reviewing your salvage reports from the past month. You've been spending considerable time in the Kepler sector debris fields. Yes, sir. Good salvage opportunities in that area, and it's relatively safe from Zephyrian patrols. Any encounters with enemy forces or civilian populations? David felt sweat forming on the back of his neck. No enemy encounters to report, sir. Good. We're tracking increased Zephyrian activity in that sector, possibly search and rescue operations looking for survivors from their destroyed facilities. If you encounter any alien presence, military or civilian, your orders are to report immediately and maintain safe distance until military units can respond. Understood, sir. Torres, I want to be clear about this. Any alien contact, any alien technology, any alien biological material, all of it is to be reported without delay. The Xenobiology Division is particularly interested in live specimens for study. David's stomach churned as he thought about Pip hiding behind the water recyclers, probably listening to every word through the ship's internal audio system. Copy that, Colonel. I know you were never comfortable with the combat aspects of this war, Torres, but remember that we're fighting for human survival here. These creatures aren't like us. They don't think like us, they don't value individual life like us, and they certainly don't have human emotions or attachments. Whatever you encounter out there, don't make the mistake of projecting human characteristics onto alien behaviors. Yes, sir. Stay safe out there, Commander. Martinez out. The connection closed, leaving David alone with the weight of everything he'd just heard. Behind him, he could hear the soft sounds of Pip emerging from her hiding place. Papa David? Her voice was smaller than usual. The Colonel Human thinks all bugs are not real people. David turned to find her standing in the cargo bay doorway, her bioluminescent patterns dimmed to almost nothing. Pip. Colonel Human said bugs don't have real feelings like humans have real feelings. Said bugs don't care about family love or friend helping. Her antennae were flat against her head. Does Papa David think maybe bugs are not real people too? David dropped to one knee, bringing himself to her eye level. Pip, look at me. She raised those enormous compound eyes to meet his gaze. You are absolutely, completely, 100% a real person, he said firmly. You think, you feel, you care about others, you get scared and happy and sad. You love your parents' memory, you worry about making me proud, and you try to help lonely maintenance drones feel better. You are more real than most people I know. But Colonel Human says. Colonel Martinez is wrong, David said simply. He's a good soldier and probably a decent person, but he's wrong about Zephyrians. He doesn't know you like I know you. Pip's patterns brightened slightly. Papa David really thinks Pip is real person. I know you're a real person. The realest person I've ever met. David pulled her into another hug. And anyone who can't see that isn't worth worrying about. Even if it makes danger trouble for Papa David. David thought about Colonel Martinez's words, about military protocols and enemy aliens and the consequences of harboring a creature that officially didn't exist as anything more than a biological weapon. Then he looked at Pip's hopeful expression and felt his resolve crystallize into something unshakable. Especially then, he said quietly. Because the people worth being are the ones who protect the people they care about, no matter what kind of trouble it causes. Pip's bioluminescent patterns flared brighter than he'd ever seen them, and she made the happy clicking sound that had become his favorite noise in the universe. Papa David is best human papa in all the star spaces, she declared solemnly. And you're the best alien daughter in all the star spaces, David replied, surprised by how much he meant it. As they settled in for another round of Pip's creative interpretation of bedtime stories. Tonight featuring maintenance drones as heroic characters and Colonel Martinez as a confused but ultimately redeemable antagonist, David realized that his definition of family had permanently expanded beyond anything he could have imagined before finding a scared little bug in a broken emergency pod. Outside, the war continued its grinding progress, but inside their small ship, a human soldier and a Zephyrian child continued the quiet work of proving that understanding could bridge any gap, even one carved by fear and misunderstanding. The inspection notice arrived without warning, transmitted directly to David's ship while he was teaching Pip how to play chess using pieces she'd convinced the food synthesizer to create. The message was brief, official, and absolutely terrifying: routine salvage vessel inspection scheduled for 1,400 hours ship time. Prepare all documentation and cargo manifests for review. Papa David, your feeling colors just went from happy teaching to very scared hiding, Pip observed, her antennae twitching as she sensed his emotional state. What is worry problem? David stared at the official seal on the message, his mind racing through impossible logistics. Pip, we need to practice the hiding game again. Right now. But Papa David, Pip is getting good at chess thinking. Look, the little horse piece can jump over other pieces in very clever pattern. She moved her knight with obvious pride, then noticed his expression. Oh. Is serious hiding game now. Very serious hiding game. David began shutting down all of Pip's modifications to the ship systems, watching maintenance drones reluctantly return to their standard operational parameters. Military inspection team is coming aboard in 3 hours. Pip's bioluminescent patterns immediately dimmed to almost nothing, a fear response David had learned to recognize. Military humans will do bad things to Little Bug if they find Pip. They'll do bad things to both of us, David said grimly. Remember what we practiced, the special hiding compartment has its own air recycler and sound dampening. You can stay there safely for up to 8 hours. Pip remembers. No breathing sounds, no light making, no talking to ship computers. Her voice was steady, but David could see her 4 hands trembling slightly. How long will scary humans stay on ship? I don't know. Could be an hour, could be all day. David knelt down to her level. Are you scared? Very scared. But Papa David taught Pip that being scared is okay if you still do brave helping actions anyway. She straightened her small shoulders. Pip will be best invisible bug ever so military humans don't hurt Papa David. David felt his chest tighten with pride and terror in equal measure. You're incredibly brave, Pip. Learn from best human Papa. She hugged him fiercely. Papa David, if military humans find Pip anyway, Pip wants Papa David to know that living with Papa David was best time in all of Little Bug's life. They're not going to find you, David said with more confidence than he felt. But just in case, you should know that these past 2 months with you have been the best time in my life too. They spent the next hour preparing the ship for inspection, erasing every trace of Pip's presence while she practiced moving through the hidden compartments David had installed throughout the vessel. Her natural ability to navigate in zero gravity and squeeze through impossibly small spaces made her an expert at becoming invisible, but David's heart hammered every time he thought about what would happen if the inspection team brought deep scan equipment. Pip, he said as she prepared to enter the main hiding compartment, if something goes wrong, if they find you or take me away, I want you to remember the emergency protocols we practiced. Emergency beacon set for human friend Sarah Chen, food synthesizer programmed with Pip-safe nutrition, ship autopilot set for neutral space coordinates, she recited dutifully. And Papa David's friend humans in the outer colonies know about Pip and will help if needed. Good girl. David sealed the compartment, watching her disappear behind layers of sound-dampening and sensor-blocking materials he'd scavenged from various wrecks. I'll see you soon. Her muffled voice came through the intercom, see you soon, Papa David. Pip loves Papa David very much. The inspection team arrived precisely on schedule, 3 humans in military uniforms, led by a stern woman whose insignia identified her as a full commander. David recognized the type immediately, career military, absolutely by the book, and possessed of the kind of thoroughness that could uncover secrets hidden in quantum encryption. Commander Torres, she said briskly, I'm Commander Walsh, Inspector General's office. This is Lieutenant Harrison and Specialist Kim. We're conducting random inspections of all civilian contractors operating in contested space. Welcome aboard, David replied, hoping his voice sounded steadier than he felt. All documentation is ready for your review. The inspection proceeded with methodical precision. They examined his salvage logs, checked his cargo manifests against actual inventory, and ran detailed scans of every system on the ship. David watched nervously as their equipment probed deeper into areas he'd modified, but his camouflage work held up under their standard scanning protocols. "Interesting modifications to your environmental systems," Lieutenant Harrison observed, studying readings on his scanner. "Enhanced air recycling, upgraded water purification, expanded food synthesis capabilities. Planning to take on passengers?" "Long-range salvage operations," David replied smoothly. "Sometimes I'm out here for weeks at a time. Better safe than sorry." "Sensible precaution." Commander Walsh examined his salvage records. "You've been quite successful in the Kepler sector debris fields. Any unusual encounters?" "Define unusual." "Intact technology, unidentified materials, biological contamination." Her eyes sharpened. "Alien presence of any kind?" David felt sweat forming between his shoulder blades. "Standard debris recovery. Mostly damaged human equipment and raw materials. No signs of Zephyrian salvage operations. Intelligence suggests they're conducting search and rescue missions in areas where their facilities were destroyed." "Haven't seen any alien activity," David lied, thinking about Pip hiding not 10 meters from where they stood. "The debris fields I work are pretty picked over." Specialist Kim was conducting detailed scans of the ship's internal systems, his equipment beeping steadily as it analyzed everything from power consumption to atmospheric composition. "Commander Torres, we're detecting some unusual energy patterns in your electrical grid. Almost like someone's been teaching your ship's AI to operate more efficiently." David's blood turned to ice. "More efficiently?" "Your maintenance drones are operating in perfect synchronization, your power distribution is optimized beyond standard parameters, and your environmental controls are maintaining more precise atmospheric balance than factory specifications should allow." Kim frowned at his readings. "It's almost like someone with advanced systems knowledge has been fine-tuning your ship." "I've always been good with technology," David said weakly. "Sir," Kim said to Commander Walsh, "I think you should see this." They huddled around his scanner, studying readings that David couldn't see but desperately wished he could. After several minutes of quiet conversation, Commander Walsh straightened with an expression that made David's stomach clench. "Commander Torres, we need to conduct a more thorough inspection. These readings suggest possible contact with alien technology or personnel." "I don't understand." "Your ship's systems have been modified using techniques that don't match any known human engineering protocols. Either you've encountered alien technology, or you've had contact with someone who has." Walsh's voice carried the implacable authority of someone used to uncovering uncomfortable truths. "Standard procedure requires us to examine every compartment of this vessel until we determine the source of these modifications." David watched them begin a methodical search that would inevitably lead them to Pip's hiding places. His mind raced through increasingly desperate options: fight 3 trained military personnel, attempt to disable their ship and run, try to convince them that his modifications were the result of salvaged alien technology rather than an alien child living aboard his ship. Then Specialist Kim stopped abruptly, his scanner emitting a sound David had never heard before, a rapid, rhythmic beeping that seemed almost musical. "Commander," Kim said urgently, "I'm getting massive electromagnetic interference from somewhere on this ship. Whatever's causing our unusual readings just became much more active." David realized what was happening. Pip was scared, probably listening to the conversation through the ship's internal sensors, and her emotional distress was triggering involuntary responses in every electronic system within range. The maintenance drones began humming softly, the lights flickered in complex patterns, and even the food synthesizer started producing harmonious chiming sounds. "What the hell?" Lieutenant Harrison pulled out his own scanner, which immediately began displaying readings that defied rational explanation. The entire ship's computer network just started operating like it's singing. Commander Walsh drew her sidearm. "Commander Torres, step away from all control panels and explain what's happening to your ship." I can't, David said honestly. I mean, I know what's causing it, but I can't explain it in a way that won't get us all in serious trouble. Try me. David looked at the three military personnel, at their drawn weapons and suspicious expressions, and realized he was out of options. Pip was going to be discovered anyway, and trying to lie would only make things worse for both of them. The electromagnetic interference is coming from a Zephyrian child who's been living on my ship for 2 months, he said quietly. She's scared, and when Zephyrians are scared, they unconsciously interface with nearby electronic systems. The silence stretched long enough for David to hear his own heartbeat. Finally, Commander Walsh spoke. You're harboring an enemy alien. I'm protecting a 5-year-old refugee whose parents were killed when their research station was destroyed. David met her eyes steadily. She's not an enemy. She's a scared kid who needed help. Commander Torres, you are under arrest for treason, violation of military protocol, and... Wait, Specialist Kim interrupted, staring at his scanner. Commander, you need to see this. The rhythmic beeping from his equipment had evolved into something that sounded disturbingly like a lullaby, soft and soothing and utterly impossible for electronic equipment to produce. More significantly, the readings on his screen showed patterns that looked less like random interference and more like deliberate communication. It's trying to talk to us, Kim said wonderingly. The electromagnetic patterns aren't random, they're structured like language, but unlike any alien communication protocols in our database. From the hidden compartment came a small, muffled voice, Papa David? Pip is very sorry for making ship computers sing scary songs. Pip was trying to be invisible, but got too scared and forgot how to keep feeling colors quiet. Commander Walsh looked at David, then at the source of the voice, then back at David. Papa David? It's complicated, David said. I imagine it is. Kim, can you pinpoint the source of that voice? Behind the water recycling systems, Commander. Highly shielded compartment, explains why we didn't detect it initially. Walsh considered her options, then made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. All right, Commander Torres. Call your guest out of hiding. Let's meet this enemy alien who calls you Papa. David activated the intercom. Pip, it's safe to come out now. The military humans want to meet you. Are Papa David and Little Bug in very big trouble? We're in some trouble, but it's going to be okay. Can you come out here? And try not to make the ship sing anymore. The compartment hatch cycled open, and Pip emerged with the cautious grace of someone expecting the worst but determined to face it bravely. She was smaller than David remembered, her bioluminescent patterns dim with fear and stress, but she held herself with dignity as she faced the 3 humans who held their future in their hands. Hello, military humans, she said politely, executing what might have been a bow. Pip is sorry for making electromagnetic mess on Papa David's ship. Pip was very scared and forgot how to keep feeling colors invisible. Commander Walsh stared at the tiny alien child, then at her readings, then at David. Commander Torres, we need to have a very long conversation. Yes, ma'am, David said quietly, putting a protective hand on Pip's shoulder. We do. But as Pip looked up at the military personnel with those enormous compound eyes and said, please don't hurt Papa David for helping Little Bug. Papa David is very good human Papa and Pip loves Papa David very much. David realized that their secret was finally out, and he had no idea whether that would save them or destroy them both. The debriefing room on Military Station Bravo 7 felt like a cage, all sterile walls and surveillance equipment designed to extract truth from reluctant subjects. David sat across from a panel of senior officers, with Pip beside him in a chair that had been hastily adjusted for her smaller frame. Her compound eyes tracked every movement in the room while her antennae twitched nervously, picking up emotional undercurrents that the humans couldn't sense. Let me make sure I understand the situation, General Morrison said, consulting his tablet with the methodical precision of someone accustomed to dealing with impossible scenarios. Commander Torres, you discovered this Zephyrian child in the wreckage of Research Station Kepler 7 and, rather than reporting her presence as required by standing orders, chose to harbor her aboard your vessel for approximately 8 weeks. That's correct, sir. During which time, she has demonstrated the ability to interface with human technology in ways that could revolutionize our understanding of electronic systems, showed evidence of telepathic abilities that contradict our intelligence assessments of enemy capabilities, and provided information suggesting the war began due to a first-contact miscommunication. Also correct, sir. General Morrison looked at Pip, who was doing her best to appear non-threatening while unconsciously causing the room's lighting to dim to more comfortable levels. And you, young lady, are claiming that your parents were working on translation protocols to establish peaceful communication between our species? Mama and Papa were very good at understanding different thinking peoples, Pip said seriously. They said humans and bugs had same want for family safe and home protect, just different ways of sharing meaning about same want. Different ways of sharing meaning. Pip's bioluminescent patterns brightened slightly as she tried to explain concepts that had no direct human equivalent. Bugs think in feeling colors that go between minds in family groups. Humans think in word sounds that stay inside single minds. When bugs met humans first time, bugs tried to share welcome joy feelings, but humans only heard sound noise and felt scared alone thoughts. You're suggesting that our first contact team interpreted your people's greeting as an attack? Maybe humans heard bug song and thought was fight challenge noise. Maybe bugs felt human fear anger and thought was attack ready feelings. Pip's antennae drooped sadly. Both peoples got scared and started fight back actions instead of understand helping actions. Dr. Sarah Chen, the xenolinguist who had been hastily assigned to the case, leaned forward with obvious fascination. Pip, can you demonstrate this communication method? Show us how Zephyrians share feelings across minds. Pip looked at David uncertainly. Is okay, Papa David? Won't hurt humans, but might feel strange different for single-mind people. David nodded, curious despite his anxiety about their situation. It's okay, Pip. Pip closed her enormous eyes and concentrated, her patterns shifting to soft, warm colors. Suddenly, everyone in the room could feel it, a gentle wash of emotion that somehow conveyed safety, affection, and the innocent trust of a child who believed adults would protect her. It was utterly alien and completely recognizable at the same time. My God, Dr. Chen whispered. That's actual empathic communication. Direct emotional transmission. Now imagine, General Morrison said slowly, that you're a first contact team encountering aliens for the first time, and suddenly your minds are flooded with incomprehensible sensations that feel like they're coming from outside your own thoughts. Would be very scary for people who don't know about feeling sharing, Pip agreed. Probably would think was mind attack or brain hurt magic. The implications hung in the air like a physical presence. If Pip was right, the war that had consumed both species for 18 months was based on a tragic misunderstanding, humans interpreting empathic greeting as mental assault, Zephyrians reading human panic as hostile intent. Sir, Commander Walsh said quietly, if this analysis is correct, we need to consider the possibility that neither species is actually aggressive by nature. We may have been fighting a defensive war against people who think they're fighting a defensive war. General Morrison was silent for a long moment, studying the small alien child who had inadvertently provided intelligence that could reshape their understanding of the entire conflict. Pip, what do you think would happen if humans and Zephyrians tried to communicate again, but this time with proper translation protocols? Maybe could learn that both peoples want same things. Safe families, peaceful homes, enough food and warm places for children to grow up happy. Pip's patterns brightened with hope. Maybe could stop fight anger and start friend helping instead. And you believe your parents were developing such protocols when their station was destroyed? Mama and Papa spent many seasons learning human words and human feeling meanings. They made translation bridge that could help bugs and humans share understand without scary mind touching. Pip's voice grew smaller. But when Bad Boom happened, all their work got broken and scattered. Dr. Chen exchanged glances with General Morrison. Sir, if we could recover their research, combine it with what we're learning from Pip's abilities. We might be able to establish actual communication with the enemy, Morrison finished. Commander Torres, in your professional opinion, is this child telling the truth about her parents' work? David looked at Pip, who was watching the adults with the kind of patient hope that only children could maintain in impossible situations. Sir, I've spent 2 months with her. She's never lied to me about anything, even when the truth got her in trouble. Her emotional readings through ship sensors were consistent with someone telling the truth, and her technical knowledge suggests exposure to advanced research. Plus, he added quietly, she's the most genuinely peaceful being I've ever encountered. If her species produced research scientists working on diplomatic solutions, it makes sense that they'd produce someone like her. Papa David, Pip said suddenly, her antennae twitching with nervous energy, are the military humans going to take Pip away from Papa David now? The question hung in the air with devastating simplicity. General Morrison looked at his advisors, at the surveillance equipment recording every word, at the political and military implications of every possible decision. Pip, he said finally, you represent incredibly valuable intelligence about enemy capabilities and intentions. Standard protocol requires that you be transferred to a military research facility for comprehensive study. Pip's patterns dimmed to almost nothing. Will Papa David come to research place too? Commander Torres would return to normal duties. Military personnel don't typically accompany intelligence assets to research facilities. Oh. Pip's voice was very small. Pip understands. Military humans have important work to do, and Papa David is important military human. David felt something break inside his chest. Sir, request permission to speak freely. Granted, Commander. With all due respect, sir, if you separate us, you'll be making the same mistake that started this war in the first place. David's voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. You'll be treating her as an object to be studied rather than a person to be understood. And you'll be ignoring the most important intelligence she's provided. Which is that trust and family bonds can exist across any species barrier. That individual relationships can overcome cultural and biological differences. David looked at Pip, who was trying so hard to be brave. Sir, I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for the chance to continue demonstrating that humans and Zephyrians can live together peacefully. Commander Torres, your emotional attachment to the subject may be compromising your judgment. My emotional attachment to my daughter is exactly what qualifies me to make this judgment, David said firmly. She's not a subject or an asset or intelligence material. She's a 5-year-old child who lost her family and found a new one. And if we're serious about ending this war, we need to start by proving that such relationships are possible. General Morrison studied them both, the human military officer who had risked everything for an alien child, and the alien child who looked at him with complete trust despite being surrounded by representatives of her species' enemies. Dr. Chen, he said finally, what's your professional assessment of their relationship? Sir, from a xenopsychological perspective, they've formed a genuine parent-child bond that transcends species boundaries. The child shows all the indicators of healthy attachment, and Commander Torres demonstrates protective behaviors consistent with parental instincts. Dr. Chen paused. More importantly, their relationship proves that meaningful communication between our species is not only possible but natural when approached with good faith and mutual respect. And your recommendation? That we treat this as a pilot program for post-war integration rather than a military intelligence operation. If we can document and understand how their relationship works, we might have a template for broader peace negotiations. General Morrison was quiet for so long that David began to worry he was calculating the most efficient way to separate them permanently. Finally, he spoke. Commander Torres, you're being reassigned to Special Diplomatic Service, reporting directly to the Joint Chiefs. Your mission is to continue developing protocols for human-Zephyrian cooperation, using your relationship with Pip as a practical laboratory for interspecies family dynamics. David felt his heart restart. Sir. The war is going to end eventually, one way or another. If there's a chance it can end with understanding rather than extinction, we need to explore that possibility. Morrison looked at Pip. Young lady, are you willing to help us learn how humans and Zephyrians can live together peacefully? Pip's bioluminescent patterns flared brighter than David had ever seen them. Pip will help however military humans think is best. But, does this mean Pip gets to stay with Papa David? It means Papa David is now officially your guardian, with full government support for whatever resources you need. Morrison smiled slightly. Though I suspect you're going to find your quiet life as a salvage operator has become considerably more complicated. Sir, David said, thank you. Don't thank me yet, Commander. You're about to become the human point of contact for the most ambitious diplomatic initiative in our species' history. If this works, you'll be remembered as the man who helped end an interstellar war. If it fails... It won't fail, David said quietly, looking at Pip's joyful expression. We won't let it fail. Papa David, Pip said seriously, Pip knows this is very big important work. We'll do best job helping humans and bugs learn friend helping instead of fight angry. I know you will, kid. We both will. 6 months later, David stood in the observation deck of Diplomatic Station Alpha, watching the first official peace talks between human and Zephyrian representatives. The translation protocols developed from Pip's parents' research, combined with her own abilities as a cultural bridge, had made genuine communication possible for the first time since the war began. Pip, now 6 years old and considerably more confident, served as the primary translator and cultural liaison for both sides. Her natural empathic abilities, combined with her bilingual upbringing, made her uniquely qualified to help two very different species understand that they had been fighting shadows and misunderstandings rather than genuine enemies. The bug delegates feel nervous hopeful about peacemaking meeting, she reported to the human negotiation team. They want very much to stop fight hurt and start family safe again, but are worried humans still think bugs are bad scary creatures. And the human delegates? Dr. Chen asked. Humans feel careful wanting about peacemaking too. They want to protect human families but are starting to understand that bug families want same protecting caring. Pip's patterns shifted to thoughtful colors. Both sides have very similar love family feelings, just different ways of showing love family actions. David watched the negotiations proceed with the slow, careful precision of two species learning to trust each other after months of mutual fear. It wasn't perfect. There were misunderstandings, cultural conflicts, and moments when old prejudices threatened to derail the entire process. But there was also progress, genuine communication, and the gradual recognition that both species wanted the same basic things: safety, security, and the chance to raise their children in peace. Papa David, Pip said during a break in the negotiations, Pip has question about human family making. What's that? When peacemaking is finished and humans and bugs are friends, will there be other human papas who want to have bug children? And bug mamas who want human children? David looked at her seriously. Do you think there should be? Pip thinks families work better when they choose love instead of just same genetics love. Maybe mixed families could help humans and bugs remember that all peoples are just trying to take care of the ones they love. David pulled her into a hug, marveling at how much wisdom could fit into such a small alien frame. I think you might be right about that. Good, Pip said with satisfaction. Because Pip wants to help other little bugs and little humans learn that different-looking families can be just as good as same-looking families. As the peace talks resumed and David watched two former enemy species slowly learn to understand each other, he realized that Pip had been right about something else too. The most important intelligence she provided wasn't about Zephyrian technology or military capabilities or even the origins of the war. It was the simple, revolutionary idea that love could transcend any barrier, even the vast differences between species that had once seemed destined to destroy each other. Looking at his alien daughter, who was patiently explaining human emotions to a delegation of insectoid diplomats while unconsciously making the station's lights pulse in rhythm with her words, David knew that the future they were building together would be stranger, more complex, and more wonderful than anything either species could have imagined alone. And that was exactly how it should be.